can start.
All right, well, can everybody hear me? This is working out. Well, I want to welcome you all to my session on tailoring your project according to community needs, using community assessment to find that out. My name is Lindsay Schmitt. I'm the technology librarian at Deerfield Public Library. Just to give you a little bit of background, I usually help research technology and implement it at my library, and that includes everything from the practical allowing IP ranges in, to training staff, to troubleshooting the technology when it eventually goes awry. And every day is a little bit different. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of project management as well. At my library, we wanted to remodel our building in a quite serious way. We were looking for about $14 million at Deerfield Library to remodel the building and bring it up to standards. And we wanted to make sure that our community felt the same way about what we were attempting to do. And so throughout the process, we engaged in community assessment. We put out surveys. We just did informal and formal talks. We did tours. We actually contacted a market research group, and they phoned people in the community asking questions. And we had stuff on our website, our Facebook, got the word out in our newsletters too. And when it came time for the referendum to approve this amount of money, a lot of people turned out and they voted for it, so we were very lucky. We put forth enough information for people to feel like they knew what was going to happen. We had asked for their opinions multiple times. They felt comfortable with what we were going to do. And now that our building is almost totally remodeled, our goal is to meet those expectations, to make sure that we're doing what we've promised people with the money. So there's some community assessment experience there for our library. And then on my own experience, in my own way, when we moved to our temporary location to remodel the old building, I wanted to conduct a staff comfort with technology survey at that time. We were going to be moving into a temporary space. People would have new duties to take care of, and my biggest concern was our circulation staff. For the first time ever, they were going to be handling the public computers, and that had always been referenced, taking care of that, and circ staff were scared. A couple of years ago, I taught them how to use a mouse for the first time, what a graphical user interface was for the first time. So there was a lot of anxiety there, and I wanted to ease that, bring their skills up, and so I put forth a survey and collected the results, saw what people really needed to work on, and then I created a series of training experiences for them. In each experience, they were accompanied by a librarian training them, and there was some paperwork involved. For every training situation, the librarian was able to check off, yes, they've learned this, they've learned that, maybe they need more help with this, and those forms went to the head of circulation so she could keep a running tab on how things were going. At the very end of the process, it took about 6 months, we actually, my librarians helped me out, and we did a role-playing experience for the circ staff in our temporary building before we opened it up to the public. Librarians pretended to be patrons. They had their standard set of questions to ask the circ staff, and the feedback was really positive. The circ staff said it really helped them feel more comfortable with the situation. They felt properly trained to handle this, and again, there was a form involved, submitted to the circulation manager. We went live, and I'm very happy to say that in a matter of a month, maybe, all the circulation clerks were raised to the level of assistant. So I have met my outcome. I wanted them to feel comfortable and be able to do this new job and move forward, and that's what happened. So I'm hoping you guys will have similarly successful experiences with your own projects. So to begin, a little more formally, what is community assessment and why is it important? A definition you could use is an evaluative study that uses objective data to assess the current social conditions of a specified community or targeted area. Basically, you would just want to study your community. What do they need? What are they looking for from your library? How do you remain relevant in their lives? And I just wanted to tie in David Lankes' speech this morning. That was super awesome. This is a great opportunity to turn problems into opportunities. You're not trying to target what's wrong. You're not coming up to them and saying, hey, you guys, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, let's help you out. It's, we're going to offer this awesome skill, we're going to offer this new technology. Is this going to help your dreams or your aspirations? And it's all about human-to-human communication, connection, learning, as David was saying. I think that's a great message to keep in mind. And also know that as you're getting into this, as you're thinking about reaching out to your community to help design your project, it's okay to fail. You've been hearing this a little bit. It's okay to fail. What did Beck Tench say? It's evidence that you learned something. So if you fail, you try it again, you do something different, and you move on. It's just important to try and serve your community as best as possible. Excuse me. So what's the basic process in doing a community assessment? Well, you have to make decisions on what you want to find out and how you're going to find it out. And we'll talk about that in just the next slide. Then once you have those pretty pivotal, important things figured out for yourself, you go forth, conduct the community assessment, review what you find, and set up your goals. Once you have your goals, you can do your project, and from there you can evaluate your project's success. Did you meet what your goals were? And that answer can be yes or no. And either way, it can be healthy to repeat community assessment. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not a one-time thing. It can be informal, it can be formal, but the ultimate goal is to continue serving our communities. And sometimes the best way to find out what they need is to go figure, talk to them. So moving on, these are some of the decisions to make beforehand as you're considering making or doing a community assessment. What population do you wish to sample? Do you have an idea in mind already that you want to target kids, teens, adults, homebound, distance learners, any specific group? Or do you just want to reach everybody? That's another option. How many people would you like to participate in this assessment? Are you just going to casually talk to a couple people at the desk? Are you going to hopefully aim for like 100 people to respond to a survey online? Are we talking bigger, 1,000 people? What kind of data set do you need to really get a picture of what your community wants? Is your main goal to think about. And once you have those in mind a little bit, you can start thinking about what type of assessment or what types of assessment should you use. They all have their pluses and minuses, which we'll talk about in a minute. And with that, are there key questions that need to be answered and at what level of detail? Is it enough to ask, do you use an iPad at home? Yes, no? Or is it how many hours a week? Where did you learn how to use your iPad? How many years have you had it? Which version are you on? Would you want library classes? So there are various levels to things. It's not always as clear as you might think it is. And it also depends on what information, again, that you want. And depending on the size of the project, as you're working on it and realizing this community assessment is going to be quite large, will you need more help? Do you need more staff hours contributed to this process? Are there volunteers ready and willing to go and help you? And also, how will you publicize the assessment? You don't want to just like cold call library patrons at home asking them questions at dinner time. You want to let them know this is happening. You can put it on Facebook, your website, Twitter, post it in the library, post it around the community. Let them know that the library wants their opinion. We want to know what you need from us. How can we help you continue with your aspirations? And then something that can really help is to see if similar communities have done needs assessments before. Have similar sized communities done this before? Do they have data that you could use? And if you really get into community assessment, you'll see this referred to as secondary data, stuff other people have collected. What you collect is primary data. So as you're making decisions, you also have to keep in mind some factors. Maybe most importantly is time. How much time is this going to take to actually conduct a community assessment? Because there's a time involved in just creating it. Are you meeting with a team to do this? Does this have to bounce against the library director 5 different times with different twists and turns to your edits? How much advertising time do you want? Do you want this up in the community 2 weeks before you start the surveys and the assessment? More time than that? How long will you let the assessment run? Are you going to talk to people over the course of a month, a couple months, or is this lightning fast and you'll get a couple of people's opinions in a day or two and just keep moving. And after all is said and done, you have to spend time analyzing your results. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but as you're kind of thinking about what you want to ask and the kinds of questions, know that different formats of questions take different amounts of time to analyze. There's a difference between multiple choice checkoffs and like handwritten short answer essays. So just another thing to keep in mind, and we can talk about that more later. Is there a cost to the library or the community in this community assessment? Could be staff time. Do you need to pay someone to create a piece of software? Is there someone on staff who has that skill, who could do it? And also, who needs to have a voice in this process? Do you need to talk to your director, your library board? What are your checkpoints? Who do you need to meet with to get this process rolling? And the flip side of that is, what kind of internal and external support or resistance are you facing? If you have a lot of support, awesome, go forth. If there's resistance, back to Tench was just talking about it, do what you can. And in my mind, I think that doing a community assessment can help meet that resistance. You can say 90 of 100 people said, yes, we want this form of technology in the library, we want these classes. And that might help the director, the board, whoever it is, get a better picture of why you're trying to do this and why it's important to the community. Consider available tools and resources. Again, if you have someone on staff who's real savvy and wants to do a little bit of software development for you, or someone who's real comfortable setting up Google Docs and monitoring survey results that way. And another important thing to think about is how formal is this going to get? Again, are you just chatting with people at the reference desk, getting a couple of opinions, or is this just getting larger and larger? Are you going to be publicizing this? Do you need to present this in front of your board and at the village hall? Is there a big community interest in what you're doing? Would it help to gather demographic data? You can always consider that option too. And if there's any community groups that wish to help or need to help, are you going to be working with social workers, police department, senior care services, things like that? There are people in your community you might be able to reach out to who can help you conduct these assessments or give you kind of an idea of where to go with them and what kind of questions to ask. My big soapbox, patron privacy concerns, really something to keep in mind. If you're getting people's names and addresses or important personal information, are you entering into the land of FOIA and your retention cycles where you have to keep records for 7 years? So that's something to keep in mind. Additionally, if you're trying to survey young kids, do you need parental signatures saying, yes, you can talk to my child, I release whatever information is asked? And something that came up for my library is whether or not we could use our database of patron information to reach out to people. We've been working on an e-newsletter that comes out once in a while. But when we were starting it, we really wanted to use all the emails we had in our database already. All these people had signed up for e-notifications about things that are overdue and their holds and everything. And we ultimately decided not to use all that information in our database because we hadn't asked for express permission to use their email in that way. Gray area, and to talk to your director, talk to your board, see how they feel about it, how they feel about you tapping into your database of patron information if you decide to go that route. And as we're talking about scale and size and just what might happen, will your project need grant funding? If you find out that the community says, yes, iPads, yes, laptops, yes, technology lab, does the library have the funds for this? Do you need to go elsewhere for funds, or conversely, create something a little more on the cheap? So if you don't have the money for it, you have to brainstorm ways to meet the needs without having the money behind you. So there's a variety of ways to conduct assessment. You can do surveys in person, online, over the phone, via postal mail. Postal mail might be a little much to ask of people these days to return the postcard. with their answers on it. You could do community forums, present at the village hall, and then ask people questions afterward. You could set up individual interviews and focus group interviews. Either way, they could be structured or unstructured in the sense that structured interviews, you have very specific questions that you're asking your interviewee. And unstructured is more about meeting with them and they talk to you about what's on their mind and their needs. So you get different kinds of information from how you structured or unstructured your interviews. You could consider suggestion boxes. That's a very slow, low-key way of getting feedback. Ours are mostly used for complaints. So, you could also do observations, case studies of other libraries and how they conducted needs assessments in their communities. And you can also consult public records, if necessary, if you're interested. And this is just a super short list of some tools that may help with assessment. My library loves Google Forms, so we use Google Forms for everything. You could also create a Google site, use Google Analytics to measure your web traffic. That could be another one of your goals. You find out that nobody in the community knows you even have a website. So you have to get the word out and you can watch how your web traffic increases, decreases, whatever happens. If you have a really popular Facebook community, you could do polls or use other apps to communicate with the community. I know SurveyMonkey is a real popular one. They have a free or a pay version, so keep an eye out for that. You could use a doodle poll to set up focus group dates. Has anyone used doodle polls before? Yeah. You could also, if there is any concern about potential bias on the part of the library staff conducting the assessment, you could potentially contract market research groups to conduct these phone surveys, focus groups, whatever it is. When my library went for the referendum, we contracted out because we just wanted it to be super clear. We had no motivation to turn people's minds one certain way or the other. We wanted people to feel comfortable answering however they wanted to answer. So that's a choice that we made. So what kind of questions should you ask? Well, what do you want to find out? Are you going to ask about multiple topics or just one topic? Is it just iPads or laptops, or is it all technology? Something like that. What scale are you looking at? And again, how much time and labor is available to brainstorm these questions, prepare the questions, ask the questions, and tally them? Again, difference between multiple choice online, getting ticked off as you go through, versus the handwritten responses that someone really has to dig through and try and analyze. And you also have to consider, how many questions do you want to ask? Are people really going to answer 100 questions? No. 5, 10? Sure. So different formats of questions do require different amounts of time spent summarizing the results. So let's say you had all your questions in mind, you got them out through Google poll or on your Facebook, and you're getting lots of wonderful feedback from people. Now it's time to analyze your results. What are patrons saying that they need or expect from the library? You might be surprised. If your results aren't clear, consider redoing the assessment with different questions, different target groups, different format, and so on. Change up your variables. And that said, just a little caveat, I heard someone at the end of the previous session of this say that it's not, like, doing these projects is not exactly about what you want to do. It should be what your community needs you to do. So that's another little thing to keep in mind as you're looking at the community assessment. Even if it triggers a project that maybe is not your heart's desire, it's still what the community needs, and you have to find some outlet in that to feel creative, as Patricia was saying, really make it your own. And once you have your results, start identifying your project goals. Before we get into talking about project goals, are there any questions about assessment?
I found in some of our library surveys, people like more multiple choice, and it's almost like a chore to get them to give us more feedback. So how would you work around that? I mean, how can you pull that feedback from people?
It can be really tough. I think, at least at my library, people are motivated by winning something. If you can make it a raffle, answer these 5 little questions, they'll be more likely to, throw that in the box and enter into a raffle for something or another. That's just what we do. I'm sure there's a lot of other ways to try and entice people to answer. Any other questions? So let's talk about setting goals for your project. Clear and actionable outcomes are SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. This is fabulous. Learned it in grad school. I love it. Come back to it a lot. So they're SMART. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. As you're working on your projects and thinking about what you want to do and really getting ready to write down your goals, try and think about whether or not they meet this criteria. This is often used in classroom instruction as you're setting up outcomes for your class or for the whole semester. And as you're thinking about what you want to do, what you want your goals to be, there are generally 2 kinds of project output: deliverables and knowledge and experience. Andy was talking earlier today about deliverables. You guys will have 3 things created by the end of October. And so deliverables are physical things, or they're documents online. It's something a little more tangible, accessible. Knowledge and experience, are you teaching someone how to do something? Are you giving them an experience that they haven't had before? So that's just one way to kind of frame your goal setting, is to think about these different kinds of project output. So, as you're thinking about your goals and maybe you're feeling really confused, you're not sure what to set up, you can always create a little chart for yourself of the question words: who, what, when, why, and how. And it's almost like pick and choose your own adventure from across the board. Do you want to see youth, teens, adults, whoever benefit from this? How are they going to benefit? Is it to improve, develop, increase, decrease? Any action word you can put in there. And then what changes? What is the purpose of the project? What do you want to see change? Their skills, their knowledge, their competence with something. Whatever is reflected in the community assessment that you've done. For example, one kind of outcome, if you did a community assessment and all your community said, oh, we want technology classes, we're falling behind in the workplace, we need to learn these things. Maybe you have wonderful funding and everyone supports you, you can move forward and set up an outcome for your project along the lines of library users will improve their technology skills through access to the library's new digital media lab. That's measurable through class attendance. You can have the people attending it evaluate their skills before and after. It could be one-time classes or a series of classes like Excel 101, Excel 201, and so on. I know there's a couple libraries out there that print out certificates of completion. Yes, this person took all of our Word 2010 classes. So you can see how many of those you print out. Alternatively, if you polled the community and they said you have a website, you could set up something like the library's increased presence on social media websites will drive more traffic to the library's website. So you'd have social media posts that link back to the library website or catalog, and that would be measurable through web analytics where the traffic is coming from. Alternatively, you can also have a staff side outcome where staff will submit 5 posts a week and they all tie back to a book or a DVD or an event at the library. And after time, you'll see whether or not that's successful. Is that making sense so far? Any questions? So it's just a little teaser on project planning and setting outcomes. I meant to say before that for doing community assessment, I know maybe you guys won't have enough time to really do a real in-depth assessment, or maybe you have an idea of what to do already and you want to move forward. You do have your community representatives, and these are such a useful tool for you guys. I'm very happy that you have them. And you can do a tiny little assessment with them. You can create standardized questions and ask each community representative the same thing and see what they respond back with. So that might be a more formal way to get feedback from them, really statistical data. Just wanted to throw that in. So you've done your community assessment, you figured out your goals, woo! So then go forth, conduct your project, and continue to monitor its progress. If it's long-term or has multiple stages, you can consider further assessments or usability studies to continue guiding its development. Again, community assessment doesn't happen in a bubble, it doesn't happen just once. That's a continual feedback loop, and it can be as informal or formal as you'd like. So let's say you've gone forth, done your project. You want to evaluate your project's success. Like, did you meet your outcomes? Did you create the digital media lab, provide those courses? Are people saying, oh, I've learned so much, it's amazing? Are you seeing crazy web traffic to your website that no one ever paid attention to before? Wonderful. You can also consider conducting surveys or other kinds of assessment to find out if the community is aware that you've made these changes and if they're satisfied with these newer changed services. And with that, you can submit results to the library board, the library director. If it's really awesome, put it up on your website. Say, we're listening to you. Look at this cool stuff that we've done. Please check it out and ask us questions. Do you want more? What else do you want? And then moving forward, consider regular evaluation to gauge the continued use of that service, if there's still a need for that service. Windows 8, there's a little need now. There might be more need in the next couple of years, but then the next thing will come by and that the need for it will diminish. So continued community assessment, community communication is important in providing continued service to your patrons. So before we get to the activity, are there any questions on project planning, setting up outcomes? This is stuff I love to talk about, so we can always talk later with your group. I'm also a little familiar with usability studies if you wanted to get into that. So I was hoping that you guys would play along with me with this activity. I try not to steal any ideas from any of your groups. This is more what I could see happening at my library. If we went out and did ILEAD, maybe we'd set something up like this. So Team A's members have noticed that their library strengths are serving young families with children and serving older citizens. They wish to better serve adults that don't fall into either of these groups. It's probably a common thing. They wish to better serve. So they believe that offering more online services in conjunction with circulating items that connect to those services, such as tablets or laptops, will encourage more adults to use the library's resources. So they've kind of identified the group they want to talk to and find out more from, and they kind of know they want to do something with online services and maybe circulating tablets or laptops. What kind of decisions do they need to make before doing their assessment and reaching out to the community and making sure this is something they're interested in?
Don't they have to make sure there is a need first of all?
Yeah, most certainly. Again, just because you want to do it and you think it's a cool project doesn't mean the community needs it. Like, my community maybe doesn't need circulating iPads and laptops, but it sure would be fun if we could do it. So we have to focus on something else. What other kinds of decisions do they need to make before doing it?
How best to reach that particular group?
Yeah.
What method of delivery?
Yeah, especially if you have adults who aren't coming into the library, how do you reach them? Where are they? Are they at the gym, restaurants, bars, and what are they doing? Are they, well, you have to find out where they are in order to reach them. Post the survey, post the information about it, whatever you're doing, someplace where they'll see it and catch wind of it. Maybe they're all on Facebook and following you, but too busy to physically come in. Maybe they'll want to post it on Facebook. What other kind of factors should they consider?
How many people, how many patrons in the library fit into that group? How large the group is?
Yeah, and that can be something you find in your demographic data. It depends if you collect that information when you send people up the library cards. My library doesn't do by age too much outside of juvenile and adult, but maybe you gather more information than we do. What other things should they
Could we look at like other libraries that maybe are circulating the laptop, talk to them about what results they've seen?
For sure, yeah, because where was that? I was at a conference last fall, and I met a couple of people from libraries that were circulating iPads and laptops, and there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes, like what are your circulation rules connected to that? What are the fees? What if you break the laptop? What do you do? Can everyone check them out? Or is this only for adults? My library has considered getting a laptop vending machine. Where you, yeah. That is actually a real thing. Where you have to have a credit card and swipe the credit card in order for the laptop to come out. So teens, can they do that? There's a lot of questions.
Economics in the community too.
Yeah, yeah, 100% depends on the community. What else could they keep in mind as they're getting ready to poll?
How they're gonna go about assessing in terms of.
Definitely, yeah, and what kinds of questions they want to ask people. Is it enough to say,
In person, online, are you gonna go out to a bar and sit and hand out?
yeah,
No.
and maybe that depends on your community. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, I'm here to do it.
That's
You
the
go
work
ahead.
that you get.
Go to the bar on staff time.
Maybe also not just look at other libraries that have a successful laptop checkout, but have a successful connection with the community that you're looking to connect to.
Yeah, yeah, they might just have it for kids, or, yeah, who knows what their situation
They
is.
could also be connecting in a totally different way, that, like you said, than you have thought to connect to that
Yeah.
age group.
So would it be useful to, in thinking about questions to ask these people, once we find out where they are, get to ask them questions. We could find out what online services they use, what they're not using, why aren't they using it? And that starts getting into more open-ended questions, and then more time spent analyzing it, so there's caveats to the paths that you take. What other kinds of questions would be useful for this?
Maybe PC or Mac.
Oh, yes, yeah, definitely. And that's a price point to consider.
If they do indeed want online resources, what kind of online resources do they want?
Definitely. Are they even aware of what's out there? Have you guys heard about Zinio yet? Zinio is an e-magazine provider. It's a software. It's like Overdrive, but instead of having ebooks, it has e-magazines. And you choose which subscriptions you want, People, Newsweek, Us Weekly. The prices are very similar to the print copies, which is a nice thing, but there is like a flat fee behind that goes on every year, the charge of using Zinio. And the interesting thing about it, instead of like with Overdrive where the book goes back, you're done with it, you don't have rights to it, with Zinio, patrons actually download that copy of the magazine and own it the rest of their lives until they're sold. But right now, they get to own them the rest of their lives. So that's also another thing to consider.
And how will you sustain it once you get off the ground?
That
Are
is
you
a
gonna keep it
huge
going?
question. Yeah. How much staff time, not only now, but yeah, in the future. Who's troubleshooting this? Who's talking to the vendor?
Or changes in platforms?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
vendors go broke?
yeah, yeah. You've seen in my song. I know it's. So we've talked about decisions, factors. What kinds of assessments would be useful? Do you think we'd hit this crowd better online or in person? I guess it depends.
If you're willing to go where they are, then you're certainly gonna connect with them in person very well. And oftentimes that leads to a better conversation than just saying, "Oh, will you break this out?"
Yeah.
You're gonna spend like 30 seconds on it, where they could have like a 10 or 15-minute conversation with you.
Definitely, yeah. If you go where they're at. Did you?
I think though, if you're talking about online services, those people are gonna have to be online.
Yeah.
So you may be able to get a better reflection, maybe not a better reflection, but your core people are already online. If you're gonna be using an online, you're trying to do online services.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can, and certainly at least do some of the assessment online.
Yeah, they might be more liable if they don't even have to have that face-to-face conversation. Maybe they don't come in because they just don't want to be around people, they're too busy. Maybe if you just have the online survey with radio buttons, A, B, C, D, which one you want to choose, maybe you'll get some feedback that way too.
So following that theme of being online and being where your patrons are, just do a little chit chat using your social tools that you already have to start making conversations.
Yeah, definitely. So we've thought about what we want to do, factors to consider, decisions to make, kinds of assessment that might be useful. What kind of outcomes could they set up for themselves? What would be their project goals? If they found out that the community has said, yes, we actually would look at online resources on tablets and laptops if you let us take them home. What would be your outcomes?
Circulation figures.
Yeah, this could be a huge help in identifying success. You could set up milestones for yourself, like 10% of this online services traffic comes from external IPs, or the laptops got checked out X number of times in a month, and then they doubled the next month. So you can set up outcomes that way. This could also just be a pilot project where it's just a couple months, you see if it works, because this is very expensive, and if you find out everything gets damaged, well, you have to think about that. So your outcomes could just be in the next 2 months. We'll monitor the results, we'll see if circulation stats on these go up as the word gets out, or if they go down and no one's, even though the community said yes, they wanted it, turns out, oh no, it was too much effort still to come into the library. What other kinds of outcomes? Oh, I'm sorry.
For advocacy and asking for money, I know digital stories are very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. So are you thinking like
Success stories.
success stories? This person loved checking out a tablet.
Let them tell the story.
Yeah. Again, that brings up patron privacy. Do they sign a little waiver that says you can post their video or their audio on Facebook, on the website, saying, oh, this is awesome. But that might encourage a lot more use. Other people hear that their friends in the community are using it, maybe they want to use it too. So I think that's awesome. So how could they evaluate their success?
We take more surveys when people check out notes from us. We put a survey in the box and get their feedback about the experience.
That's awesome. You get a lot of positive feedback. Do people say, oh, that was awesome?
Some of them do, yeah. Yeah, some of them draw pictures. It's great. Yeah.
Can
And
anyone?
you can also, we do something very similar for, we don't circulate things, but we have like book club in a bag.
Yeah.
So they do and other titles, other suggestions, things that you want, like maybe they want digital stories, digital versions of it, multiple copies of it, so you're able to figure that part out.
Yeah, it's even more copies from people like that. When your library started these up, was there a lot of planning and assessment beforehand, or was it, oh, let's try and see what happens?
There was a lot of planning and a lot of troubleshooting, just planning for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And we were pretty careful about it, possibly even too careful, but as a result, we've had very few problems.
That's awesome. That's really great. Does anyone else have a library that's done something like this, put forth a program or some sort of physical object that they've tried circulating to see?
We actually just got a bunch of laptop Chromebooks that we circulate, but we only use them in-house because of the cost and everything. We don't let people take them home. But we've been pretty successful, especially when our PC stations are full. Tell somebody to take a laptop and they can use the Google Cloud to print to our printers and it's connected.
That is cool. We're thinking about that too. We're trying to decide if the laptops get to walk out of the building or just stay in the building, because it's safer in the building.
Yeah.
It's safer to try it that way first.
We have MacBook checkouts, we just built a new teen center, and we do MacBook checkouts because we only have 4 iMac stations and they're always filled. So we got Mac charging part, and then we decided that even though we had an extensive like laptop user agreement form, that since they signed away like the rights of their library card, or someone signed responsibility for it, that this also is a library material, so they are responsible for that.
As you're thinking about this, if you're creating something or using something expensive, do you want to have that waiver tucked into the Nook case or tucked into whatever format that is, just so people can sign off and say, yes, I recognize I'm responsible for this thing. I'll try to be good to it. So you might also have to create library policies, and that might be a board level thing where you set up fines and fees for something expensive, decide before it happens how you're going to handle things getting damaged, how far you're going to push it, do you guys have collection agencies, things to consider if you're talking about something physical for patrons to use. Any other thoughts on this activity? What should Poor Team A do? How could they evaluate the project in 6 months? What would they want to look at?
Well, if they implement any of those online services, they're going to want to look at usage.
So it's more of the same thought, evaluating the usage, the web analytics, circulation statistics. And so once you get your project out there, it's not just done. It doesn't just float away. Like, you want to keep going back to it, looking at it, making sure it's still useful, still successful, and determining from there whether you want to reach out to the community again and move from there, make new decisions, provide new services, and so on. Let's see how we're doing that. Are there any questions at this time?
So, when you did your referendum or like for another thing, what sort of assessment did you do at your library?
For our big referendum, we first had informational sessions, and then we had a market research group do phone surveys. It was just like flipping open the phone book and calling random people in the community to ask them questions about the library, to get an authentic response. People coming into the library, that's kind of a self-selecting group. If they're coming in and answering a survey about, do you want to remodel the library, to use the library, they're there, they probably would like to remodel it. So it's a self-selecting group. Your data might be influenced by that. We did a lot of tours for more information. I think, I'd say we had surveys online too. But we looked at the results of these things, and we saw that they were positive. People were really interested in it. So we felt pretty good when the referendum came up, and then that was our proof that it was what people wanted. Then for my own experience with my 6-month training thing for our circulation clerks, I did the survey beforehand to see where they were at, what kind of tech skills they needed to work on. And that was like a self-evaluation form. That was how comfortable were they on a scale of 0 to 5 of doing that skill. 0 was, I would not be comfortable showing someone how to do this, to 5, which was, I could show this to anybody. I wouldn't need any help showing it. And that really helped. I didn't have names, just that they were in that department. And so seeing those results and averaging them out really showed me, oh my God, we have to work on Excel. Word is actually pretty good, everyone knows Word. We need to refresh our email, things like that. So that kind of assessment data really guided my outcomes. My main outcome was to make sure everyone could do the job and felt comfortable doing the job. And I feel like that was a success because they were all promoted to assistant from clerk. I'd love to do another assessment before we move back into our remodeled space and see how they're still feeling, see if there's something we can brush up on while we're closed and moving the library. So that's coming up. And
A question, were they informed that they'd have an opportunity to reach another job level, or was that just part of their normal review?
Oh, they were informed. This was,
That's quite a carrot.
yeah, yeah. It was very, my library did a very good job of letting people know that this was coming down the pike. Like a year in advance, they said, you know, we're going to remodel the building, we're moving into a temporary space. We want the temporary space to kind of reflect how we're reorganizing things for the new remodeled building. So, turns out, circulation clerks, that you will have the public computers for the first time. And, you know, that gives people time just to digest that idea that their job is changing. And throughout it all, we really emphasized they weren't going to lose their job. They're not going to lose their job. We're going to help you through this. We're going to give you the skills you need, give you the practice with it. And they knew that, well, I think it was up in the air for a while about the clerk versus assistant thing. But it was before the assessment began, before I started training them, I believe my library decided that if you know tech skills, if you're going to be handling the computers, we should pay you more. That's a different title. So they were informed that once they started doing this, they would become assistants. And I wanted to make that decision easier for the head of circulation. I wanted her to have proof behind her decision that these people were working really hard, they have learned what they've learned, they are ready to become assistants. Because there was some thought that maybe some people wouldn't be turned into assistants right away, maybe they need more time. But thankfully, all in one fell swoop, everyone was raised up.
So did they have performance reviews?
They do, we do annually. Other questions? So we've had a whirlwind tour of setting up community assessment, talking a little bit about setting up project goals. And I wanted to share with you some links. If you get really into this, want to read more, I have some links here, community assessment, reading about it. I want to say it's the Arizona Library link, the third from the bottom, that has a case study of another library doing serious needs assessment and what their outcomes were, what they decided to do to meet those needs. But you can also just search around, see what other libraries are doing. Again, it's that secondary data. Try and get yourselves a leg up on what you want to do. And I also included some links on project management. Yes?
Yeah, so this, will this be available somewhere that we can actually access those links?
Definitely, it's on the thumb drive.
It's on the thumb drive,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't just throw those up there. No, you gotta remember, you gotta figure it out. No, it's there. So links on project management, and, oh, that's the end of it. So, we've heard a lot of inspiring things already today. We had 2 really cool talks so far. So, you know, try to keep in mind what David has said about thinking to yourself, what dreams can I enable today? What can you do for your community that encourages them to continue growing? And you can get the answer to that through community assessment. And then through careful outcomes and evaluating how your project is going to meet those needs, you can continue to remain relevant, continue to do the best you can at serving your community. And again, with what Beck-Tench had just been saying before this class, is to find the creativity in your project. Maybe it's not what you want to do, maybe it's not your heart's desire, but find some way to make it interesting to you, to really carry it, make it your own, and really have pride in serving your community well. Are there any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys for attending. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm around the next couple days. Happy to talk about more project planning stuff, community assessment, if you want to talk usability studies.